Hey guys, Efriko here. If you're looking for a super tanky character that can also kill Uber Elder, this Jugg right here is a pretty good option. It's a Poet's Pen character, and Poet's Pen grants +1 to level of socketed active skill gems per 25 player levels and trigger a socketed spell when you attack. Our main gem is Volatile Dead, linked with Elemental Focus and Conk Effect. Now, Volatile Dead requires a corpse to spawn, so we have Unearth and GMP to spawn enough corpses for all our volatiles. Also linked in is Combustion, which reduces enemies' fire resistance by 19 if they are ignited by the supported skill. Here you can switch in Body Swap if you want to for general mapping to travel a bit faster. Also, we use Frenzy as the skill to trigger the Poet's Pen, linked with faster attacks, GMP, Blood Magic. Next up we have the Purity of Lightning, Purity of Ice for some extra resist, some max res, helps defensively, and Herald of Ash for increased damage. Flame Dash for mobility, Decoy Totem for some sketchy situations, Enduring Cry, always good to have as a Jugg. Easy access to your endurance charges, some extra regen when used as well. Increased duration, Vol Righteous Fire as well for 39% more spell damage during its duration. Now let's go over the gear a bit. We have Double Comb's Way, which grants 0.4% of maximum life regenerated per second per endurance charge, and +1 to maximum endurance charges. So Double Comb's Way plus Ascendancy and Skill Tree grants total 9 endurance charges, which is a lot of regen and a lot of fizz mitigation. Xav's Blood for a decent chunk of life, fire res, fire penetration, and cover enemies in ash when they hit you, which is a more multiplier and also a defensive stat. Volatile Dead destroys up to 1 additional corpse enchant on our helmet. Makes it so we go from 3 volatiles to 4, so huge damage multiplier. With some life, resist, nearby enemies have -9 to fire resistance is optimal here. This can be crafted using Pristine and a Scorched Fossil. On our boots, we're looking for the Regen enchant. Goes from 1, 1.5 and 2, depending on which lab you get it from, so this can be increased a bit. Here, we're usually looking for life, movement speed, resist, the usual stuff. These are crafted with a Pristine and a Shattering Fossil. On the gloves, I have max life. Corrupt was looking for curse enemies with elemental weakness on hit, which would be a big damage boost, but these are good enough. Because of the dex, we do need a total of 100 dex minimum for level 21 Volatile Dead, and I'm currently at 102, so the requirements for dex are kinda tight. Now the belt, fire damage, some life resist, and cooldown recovery speed. This has been crafted with a Scorched and Pristine Fossil, and then normally crafted the cooldown recovery speed on through the crafting bench. Now let's talk about cooldown recovery speed a bit. As you can see here, these are the numbers, cooldown and attack speed per seconds needed. So if you have 0 to 7%, these are the attacks per second you need to maximize your usage of the Poet's Pen. And Poet's Pen has a cooldown of 0.25 seconds, so 4 casts per second. But with some cooldown recovery, in this case 8 to 26, so this craft does the job 9 to 12. We end up in this second category here, and then we need this amount of attacks per second. If you're interested in the breakdown of why these numbers are the way they are, I will link a comprehensive Reddit guide for that down in the description, so check that out if you feel like it. Right, Now let's go over some jewels. I use Might of the Meek here for a lot of increased life and some regen. Also 5 dex here, which actually helps a lot. The Vigil, I'll show you the Vigilant strike setup in a second, has corrupted blood cannot be inflicted on you. This helps with flasks, because then you don't need bleed immunity. Well, I opted out of bleed immunity at least, because most other bleeds aren't that scary outside of corrupting blood. So instead, I squeeze in the Forbidden Taste for all content. Otherwise, if you don't have that corrupt, I would recommend Forbidden Taste only for Shaper and Elder and Guardian fights like that. Also, quick note on Wise Oak. Wise Oak gives us 10% reduced damage taken of each element for which your uncapped elemental resistances is lowest, and penetrates 15 resistance of each element for which your uncapped elemental resistances is highest. Now, as you can see, all my resists are the same, which means I get this bonus on all the resists. Obviously we only care about the damage on fire, but the defensive aspect on all 3 elements is pretty big. So try to balance for that, can be pretty rough. Otherwise just look for the highest fire penetration, the highest fire resist, so we get the penetration. Now, the rest of the skill tree focuses on endurance charges, life, and sources of damage that apply to Volatile Dead. And Art of the Gladiator is a key node because it gives attack speed and dex. Like I mentioned, we're kind of short on dex, so it's a very big node, helps us with the attack speed as well. And pick up a lot of jewels and elemental overload. Jewels prioritize stats like damage, fire damage, area damage, spell damage, anything that helps Volatile Dead with max life. Can also squeeze in some dex here or resistances if you need them. Let's mention the pantheons here. The ascendancy, then the pantheons. Unstoppable is what I like to grab first for the extra movement speed. This also has the added benefit of making us freeze immune. Action speed cannot be slowed, and movement speed cannot be slowed below base value. It makes us freeze immune. Then after that, Unflinching into Unrelenting, and last, Unbreakable. Unrelenting gives us some much needed elemental damage reduction and a lot of chaos res, which is actually very huge in Betrayal. Unflinching makes it easy for us to gain up our charges, so let's go over that. First, we have charges generated on our swords in our offhand. Gain an endurance charge every 4 seconds while stationary, 2 of these. And here's the Vigilant Strike that I mentioned earlier. Vigilant Strike with Ancestral card gives us a 30-second plus 45 duration, which is 20% reduced damage taken from hits. So all this defense layered on top of a huge HP pool make us quite tanky. Now, other options than the sword is the Gluttony Belt, which makes us take fist damage when you use a movement skill. So let's put this on, use Flame Dash, you'll see the timer goes back up. And my least favorite option is Relakesh's Impatience. Gain a Frenzy, Endurance or Power Charge once per second while stationary. Lose all charges when you move. So you gotta de-equip them before you move, and you'll keep the charges. Now these are kinda big, take a lot of space, and sometimes you have decks or your auras in the boots, and then it's a big pain to be switching on and off on those. So I do recommend bringing along the boots, the belt, or simply using this sword, because you can use the sword with Vigilant Strike. Now Pantheons, I use Lunaris and Tukahama most of the time. Solaris is the best for bosses in our case, and Lunaris can also be used to speed up our regular mapping a bit. Also Jugg upgraded gives reduced cold damage taken, useful against Shaper and Elder. This build can easily be leveled with Poet's Pen. Just follow the skill tree, grab life and damage when you feel you need it. Can easily prioritize a lot of life with Poet's Pen. And if you don't have these, I would recommend maybe some kind of two-hander, Sunder, Earthquake, Consecrated Path. If you're comfortable with those, there's also an option to go with Righteous Fire. But yeah, if you have Poet's Pen, just go with the Poet's Pen, it's easy leveling. Now, some quick notes on the path of building for this character. As you can see, the damage seems kind of low, right? 49,500. That is per volatile. And we spawn 4 volatiles with the enchant. And then that is spawned a little bit over 4 times per second with some cooldown recovery. So we end up at around 800,000 Shaper DPS with Righteous Fire active. So not too shabby. But one thing that is quite nice about Volatile Dead is they actually stick around for a bit. Like you can see, they stick around for around 7 seconds before they start blowing up. That means that we can actually stack up a little bit over 5 million Shaper DPS before the fight even starts, and start off the fight with a huge chunk of damage, which is very helpful against fights like Shaper and Elder, because they have that talking or something. Otherwise, if they don't have a face before, just stack up and then walk in to trigger the fight, and the balls will go for the boss. Very useful. Right, I'm going to link this character and a higher budget version, because you can actually optimize this a lot better damage wise, but this is more than enough for Uber Elder. But if you want more damage to cut down the time, I will show you in a second path of building how to do that. Quick note, a Watcher's Eye, if you want to utilize that, I would say Anger Leech is the best thing, and you need some extra resistance to drop one of the purities. Squeeze in a Enlighten, so you drop Decoy Totem for an Enlighten and add Anger. That is the Watcher's Eye. I would go for Anger Leech, preferably with a damage stat on top of that, but you can see that in the path of building linked below. So if you have any questions about this character, feel free to comment or drop by the live stream. And if you want to see this character in action, I'm gonna make a video of an Uber Elder fight with some commentary explaining the fight from this character's point of view. So check that out if you're interested. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed.